As House Speaker Paul Ryan steps away from Washington, many are wondering what will happen to his seat and how that will affect politics in Wisconsin. And here now with insights on all of that is Matt Batesel, National Executive Director of American Majority, who's based in the Badger State. Thanks a lot for joining us today, Matt.
Thanks for having me.
So Ryan has just made this announcement. Were you surprised? Were people in Wisconsin surprised?
I think people were surprised at the timing. There had been a report, I think, from Tim Alberta from Politico back in December that there was rumors of this happening, and that Speaker Ryan had a sense of accomplishment with tax reform and other things that he had done. I think some people thought that he would serve out a little bit longer, maybe one more term. And so, yeah, there's a lot of people now wondering what is the fallout, what are the ramifications of this now that there's an open seat for Congress in Wisconsin's 1st congressional district.
Right, and really not a lot of time before things need to get in place. Talk a little bit about Democrats are saying that there's a blue wave coming, and that was, really the reason he stepped down. I mean, how competitive is his seat, his district? Well,
it'll be a competitive seat, probably the most competitive congressional seat in Wisconsin now. And yeah, I think conservatives should be alarmed at what's happening. We look at some of the elections that have happened recently in Wisconsin. There's a Supreme Court race last week where a conservative lost by 10 points. And we definitely see in polling consistently that there is an enthusiasm gap. But conservatives can rally, and there certainly is plenty of time for them to get their voters motivated and excited and ultimately talking to their friends and neighbors and turning out in November. So I'd say conservatives should be concerned about what's happening with these elections, and they need to use it as motivation to do things now so that they can actually win in November.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, talk a little bit about, a lot of people think about Wisconsin and they think about the president winning there and that being, really exciting and a big part of his campaign. And then, of course, Ryan being in his district all these years. So it seems kind of puzzling that his seat would really be competitive for the GOP. How can that be?
Well, he hasn't really faced strong challengers, and part of it's because he has been such a good fundraiser and a good representative, I'd say, for that district, getting to a lot of events in the district. And anytime you have an open seat, it's harder to defend that seat when you don't have the power of incumbency and generally a cash advantage. Certainly there'll be plenty of money from conservative groups that will go to defending that seat. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that. But there is this concern that people have been complacent, and I'd say not just in Wisconsin but around the country. Conservatives, yeah, they look at the wins that we've had at the state level, federal races. You mentioned the president winning Wisconsin. We've had certainly conservative wins almost in every election cycle except 2012 when Barack Obama won the state. But you look at Walker's election, Governor Scott Walker's election first in 2010, his recall win in 2012, his re-election in 2014, and then Trump winning in 2016, and Senator Ron Johnson winning 2 elections in that span. And you think that this is a state that conservatives should have a good time winning in a midterm election. And I think, unfortunately, conservatives have been complacent, and that's why they're losing in some of these races. Conservatives can't just put things on autopilot. They have to be motivated. They have to get back to the basics. They have to motivate their voters. They have to develop, a candidate who emerges from the Republican primary in the 1st congressional district. They need to have a good message. They need to be able to talk to the voters about why conservative solutions to the problems are better for them. Why is our economy doing well? Well, it's new leadership. It's not because of President Obama or something he did, 6 or 8 years ago. It's because we have new leadership. We're cutting regulations at the federal level. And specifically in Wisconsin, conservatives have had control in the state legislature and the governor's office, and they've enacted conservative reforms that have helped the taxpayers save billions of dollars. Property taxes today are lower on my home in Sheboygan County, Wisconsin, than they were when Governor Walker was first elected in 2010. So conservatives have a great track record of success. They need to be able to communicate that and not just rest on their laurels of past electoral success.
Mm-hmm. This is also a really interesting year. Not only is it midterm elections, but of course there's been so many GOP retirements announced, really a historic number. So do you see this as really an uphill year for the Republican Party?
Well, generally midterm elections benefit Republicans, and conservatives generally have done well. But you look back at 2006.
I'm sorry, you mean generally midterms benefit the opposing party? Or?
Well, so there's that for when a new president comes in. But generally in midterm elections, the electorate that turns out, forgetting what happens, with a president's first midterm election after he's elected, typically midterm elections, the people who are turning out, there's a lower turnout, and those are more diehard voters, which tends to benefit Republicans. But you're also pointing to a historical trend of when a president comes into power, new party comes into power, their first 2 years after being elected in the midterm election, they tend to lose a lot of seats. And so those two, I think, trends are clashing a little bit here. Right? What's going to happen? And I train candidates all over the country. We train specifically for state and local, and trying to build up a new generation of conservative leaders. And we train all the time about you have to develop your own message. You need to develop your own coalitions of voters who are going to turn out for you. You can't just ride the coattails of a higher level candidate. You actually need to do the basics of campaigning, of understanding the electorate, what motivates them, talking about the issues that they care about, not just some pet issue of yours that fits your profile, but you need to talk about the issue that voters care the most about at that particular time. We're seeing with this resistance to the president and a lot of energy on the left from rallies you see all across the country, that they're fired up. And so conservatives can match that and have to match that. They have to organize. They have to talk to friends and neighbors. The number one way to convince people to vote differently in an election is to have a conversation with them, face to face, right? This isn't just some thing where we rely on Facebook or some digital communication. We need to actually have live conversations with people and tell them why conservative solutions are better for the problems facing our country.
All right, and I want to just circle back on that because everyone, it seems like, is talking about digital media, social media, but you're saying there's still some value in the old school methods.
Yes, right. Yeah, and digital communication generally has the highest impact amongst people who actually you personally know. And so studies would show that has an impact. A friend-to-friend communication on Facebook, for instance, can motivate people to vote, and people should engage in those sorts of things. But it's rooted in a personal relationship you have. It's not just some impersonal thing of someone that you follow on Twitter that you never met. You're going to have the most influence over the people that you personally know, your friends, your family, your classmates, your work colleagues, having conversations with them about the issues that they care about. What's happening with our economy, right? Are there going to be more jobs in the future? Are we, in a better place now? Do we have leadership on the world stage? These are the things that people care about. Are we safe is our homeland safe? Are we in a good position or a better position for national security standpoint? These are the issues that people care about. And we need to have a conversation about them. Yes, we're in a better position now than we were under the prior president and under leadership from Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats.
Well, I'm intrigued to hear you say that. I also want to ask you about this Republican Senate candidate in Wisconsin, Kevin Nicholson. And he is doing something which I don't think we've seen a lot of, saying, hey, I will just do one term if that's what's needed to take to make the right decisions, to do those tough votes. How are voters responding to him talking about possibly just doing one or two terms? Yeah,
so in that particular race, the incumbent is a Democrat, and probably the most progressive Democrat, Senator Tammy Baldwin, and she is very vulnerable. Polling shows she's under 40% favorability, and so Kevin Nicholson is someone who is running. He's a Marine. He's an outsider. He's running as an outsider and doing things I think a lot of voters want to hear from the candidates that are running, that they want to actually tackle the challenges. They want to solve problems. They're not going to make a political career out of it. And so outsider candidates typically do well in elections. Think of President Trump, obviously. In Wisconsin, we think of Senator Ron Johnson winning in 2010 and 2016, running both times as an outsider over this insider, former Senator Russ Feingold. And so voters like to hear straight talk. They don't want to just pad someone's career or give them a pension or give them more taxpayer money. They want people who are going to go there and solve the problems. And Kevin Nicholson has campaigned on, I want to go and solve the tough challenges, the economic challenges. And if it means, reforming things and only serving one term because the voters want to go in a different direction, but we actually did the tough things, that's fine. He's willing to do that, serve one term and move on. I think he's in particular committed to not serving more than 2 terms. And he's leading in the Republican primary right now, has a resounding lead, I think, by almost 20 percentage points, and is so the leading candidate to take on Senator Tammy Baldwin. He's a top-tier candidate and has a message that's resonating and is able, I think, is building coalitions that can help him to win in November. And that's really what we need to win in this, what could be a blue wave year. We need candidates who are not just going to do the playbook that worked in 2010 or 2014, but we want candidates who are going to put together their own coalitions, develop a good message, and reach the voters and turn enough voters out to vote for them on election day. That's how we win in a tough election year, even if it's a blue wave.
All right. Well, Matt Batesel, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Heather.